August marks the start of back to school. I don't know about you. My children start school next week. I could not be any more excited. So for kids, it's exciting. For parents, it's more exciting. But what we want to talk about today is the importance of continuous learning for businesses. And I think that now is as important of a time as any to think about what we're doing from an organizational standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, to prioritize continuous learning. The future of work, as we know, is going to take many skills that people don't yet have. An interesting tidbit from the World Economic Forum Future of Jobs report, for instance, found that 50% of employees will need reskilling by 2025 in order to keep pace with emerging technologies. 50% by 2025, which is a handful of years from now. I mean, that's a big deal. So addressing the prevalence of disengaged employees, addressing, what HR leaders need to do and think about, what business leaders need to do and think about. That's why we're here today, to have this conversation. So, Amanda, welcome back to the show. It's always a pleasure to have you, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this topic.
Well, thank you for having me, Shelly. Yeah, it's back to school season is a great excuse to have this conversation. But like you said, it's really about continuous learning in the enterprise.
Right.
It's not a once a year thing or a once a month thing. It is at this point it is continuous and it's on the job.
Yeah.
The stats from the World Economic Forum are no surprise at all,
Right.
particularly with the pace of change that the economy is going through, the markets are going through, and with some of the changes ushered in with the pandemic. There are companies facing real retention problems
Right.
with their workforce, and at the same time, an increasingly growing IT skills gap.
Right.
And when you have that, I think that employees can feel it's a bit of a catch-22 because you have sometimes fewer people in the workforce as you're facing the retention problems, and yet you also have the pressure to learn new things and add more skills. So how in a day-to-day where there's increasing pressure put on the existing people in the workforce to just get the work done, they also need to be upskilling at the same time. And I think that can feel, like a pretty tight situation for a lot of people. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we definitely see changes coming. I think that 50% may actually accelerate. So by the time we're getting new
Right.
stats in 2025, they're probably going to be telling us 60 or 70%, because the pace of change is only increasing as
Right.
well. And yeah, so it's really driven a change in how companies need to think about their learning and development programs and how to make things bite-sized, how to make things sort of in the moment, so it's kind of learning moments instead
Right.
of classes. And one of the things, one of the trends that I'm particularly interested in, and I think could be a real positive change in this area, is the idea of kind of peer-to-peer learning. So how do you learn from other people on the
Right.
job instead of a trainer, instead of even a virtual classroom? How do you have a peer-to-peer exchange? How do you facilitate that and have that happen?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think that, as we of course have been focusing on digital transformation for the last decade before we even were calling it digital transformation. But one of the things that we talk about a lot is, you have to create a culture around data and understanding the data is the lifeblood of business. And you have to create, there are all different kinds of things that I think from a cultural standpoint that leaders and organizations need to do. And creating a culture that embraces innovation and curiosity and change and continuous learning. And boy, that's a lot because human beings in general don't love change. But as you mentioned, for anybody who thinks, and I say this all the time, actually, I tell anybody that I'm interviewing for a job, I tell them, here's one reality. If you hate change, you will not like working with us, because we are all about change, and we are all about learning, and we are all about quick pivots. And I think that that really is the secret to success for businesses of all. I mean, we have a very small company, but even at the enterprise level, I think that's incredibly important. But that culture of curiosity. I know curiosity is one of your touch points, but and of continuous learning is super important. And I think that statistically, and I know that I've talked with another SAP partner on this topic, and I can't remember off the top of my head who it was, but I did an interview with them sometime last year, and I will find that and link it in the show notes because he was amazing. But I think that from a learning and development program standpoint within organizations, there was a time when that was really a big priority, and then that kind of shifted, and we kind of got away from focusing on corporate learning and development programs. And now what the research is telling us is that we don't have any more time to fool around. We have to get back to making this a priority within our organizations. And I'm pretty sure you'll agree with that.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And yes, the white paper I was reading recently actually mentioned that it just having a learning program can improve employee engagement by like 20%. So
Yeah.
that it's vital.
Yeah, absolutely. I was, and I know you're a little bit of an information junkie like I am. I was looking at some data points on the Great Resignation, and from SHRM last year, they reported 47.8 million workers quit their jobs. That's an average of nearly 4 million people a month leaving their jobs. That means that 2021 was the highest average on record for that. And for comparison purposes, the lowest that we had was in 2009, where we had about 1.75 million workers quitting each month. Now, of course, that was, the market was a mess in 2009. We had lots of things going on. That low number doesn't surprise me because it was a time when you were incredibly lucky to have a job, right? But I thought that that was really interesting. And I also thought that there was a Pew Research survey out that was in the spring of this year, and it showed the top 10 reasons that employees left a job. Of course, the highest reason, and not surprising at all, was that the pay was too low. But the second most important reason that employees left a job was that there were not opportunities for advancement, and that 63% of people left because of that reason. Other people felt like there were other things like feeling disrespected or not enough flexibility or whatever. But I believe that opportunities for advancement, that lack of opportunities for advancement that's cited here, speaks directly to learning and development opportunities. Because if we're not providing those for employees, if they're not seeing how they're able to learn and grow and progress and focus on building their careers, they're out.
Yeah, and I think that it speaks to a couple things. So one, yes, continuing to provide development opportunities. So not just new skills, but the types of skills that are going to set employees up for future success, and will make them, more and more valuable in the internal job market within a company, and externally. And that also speaks to kind of, you mentioned curiosity, and I think that as much as the responsibility is on the employer to provide these learning opportunities and to provide them, sort of meeting learners where they are, so looking at different ways to deliver this type of learning, it's also on the individual employee. There is a responsibility to have that mindset of curiosity, of being a lifelong learner, of asking why, and wanting to understand how things work, and be more agile in your own learning. And that's
Right.
one of the things, actually, on my team, um that we try to reward a bit. So we actually do kind of a quarterly recognition and rewards program. And one of the things that we kind of honor there is a light bulb award, and that's for folks who have thought out of the box. They've tried something new. It doesn't have to have succeeded. They just have to
Right.
have tried something new and learned from it, and
Right.
optimized from it. So there's a little bit of learning from failing in there as well. And then we also have a true grit award, which is for demonstrating resilience, and being able to problem solve, um, and drive for results despite setbacks. So both of those help kind of foster that curiosity mindset. And I think that you need both. You need
Yeah.
you need the curious learner, and you need the kind of corporate strategy for how we're going to get learning and development opportunities into the hands of the employees.
Yeah, and I think that those are such smart initiatives. I will say that, I think back to um, my time in college. I didn't go to college immediately after high school. I went into the workforce for a little bit, and then I went to college, and I was paying for my own education at that point in time. And I love academics anyway, but I'd be in a class and I'd have a question and I'd raise my hand and I'd have another question and I'd raise my hand and I'd have another question and I'd raise my hand. And like I would oftentimes be the only person doing that. And and I see this in my own kids, sometimes a reluctance to step up and, put yourself at center stage and say, and my point in all this is that, like, it sounds like what you have is that there's no dumb ideas category. There's no such thing as a dumb idea. Like, bring all of your ideas and all of your suggestions, and together we can suss them out. I think when you create a culture of that, and you really encourage people to not feel self-conscious, or oh, people are going to judge me or whatever, I think that really leads to great things, and I would imagine you're seeing that.
Yeah, actually, yeah, yes, that speaks to kind of a concept that we've really been focused on lately, which is that psychological safety. So not
Right.
just we need you to be curious, but you should feel safe asking questions.
Right.
No judgment. Everything is an opportunity to learn.
So, what I want to talk about now is the skills shortage. And as you know, so we've talked around this topic a lot, and we know that the skills shortage is having a big impact on business. I mean, you can't read, you can't read an article, you can't exist in this business community without knowing that the skills shortage is having a big impact. What I want to know is, what are some of the things that you're seeing and hearing from customers and vendor partners?
So I think maybe one of the biggest data points we have to to look at to understand the need and the continued demand for learning, and for kind of continued skills enhancements is sort of the uptake of our comprehensive learning management system, our LMS system, which is SAP Learning Hub for our customers.
Right.
So that has over 750,000 online subscribers. In 2021, there had been 3.5 million course enrollments, and over 400,000 learning room members. And then there were also 40,000 live learning session attendees last year, and 4.5 million SAP learning journey views. So what we've seen is an uptake in that type of enterprise learning that we would expect to see in the face of a skills
Right.
shortage. So that that really speaks to that. And then what we have also seen um, are two things. So one, customers are telling us that they need some of those adjusted types of learnings that I've talked about earlier, like that peer-to-peer gamification, possibly the use of is there a way to use AI or virtual reality? They are
Right.
looking actively for innovative new ways to enhance some of the learning programs that they already have in place. And also, even when it comes to adoption of kind of existing apps or software solutions, they're looking to have some stuff built in, so so that the new tools, the new technology that is continually pushed into the workplace needs to have some learning built in as well, so that people can get up and running quickly. And then on the partner side, the partners are responding. So, there's this customer need for the shift in learning. And then we have the partners really, doubling down and delivering. I'm super impressed with our SAP ecosystem and the innovation that's coming out of it right now in this space. Um, for example, there's Centrical, which is it's Centrical for enterprise learning, which ties into kind of existing SAP investments, but that helps folks who are remote stay connected and have continuous learning and feel like they're part of a team. So this has some of that gamification built in. It enables peer-to-peer team and individual competitions, but in a fun way. They also have personalized micro learning, which is triggered in workflow, so it comes in right when it needs to
When you
and
need
has
it.
impact that it needs right when it needs to and fills that knowledge gap for a
Yeah.
person. So I've been super impressed with that. There's also the Immerse platform, another one of our partners, and this uses virtual reality and other immersive technologies to help transform employee training. And obviously, this can lead to improved outcomes for onboarding, for technical
Right.
expertise,
Right.
and for soft skills. So it's not just always the hard technical skills that these focus on. And what's really cool is that companies can kind of create, deploy, scale, and measure integrated virtual reality training, for their teams. And yeah, there's a great case study actually up on our SAP store, which is where all these partner apps can be found.
Right.
Great case study for GE Healthcare, and the immersive learning platform, which again, I'm continually impressed with the innovation that comes out of the SAP ecosystem.
I think that's really exciting. I'll link that. I'll link that in our show notes here for our audience. I think that, for any of us who have ever done any kind of online learning or certification or recertification or whatever, you even think about that and you have a groan. It's an involuntary groan, right? Because for years, many times, those have just been arduous, boring, kind of just plodding programs that we had to wade through. And so it's so great to see. And not only, we have become, I was looking around, I can't believe my cell phone isn't like right here. I don't know. But we have these computers that are in our hands 24/7s or
Mhm.
by our side 24/7. And so we become so accustomed to, when I don't know something, oh, here's a YouTube video, here's this, here's that, And so it makes absolute perfect sense that learning um, applications and platforms and offerings and everything else, they need to be able to be quickly accessed. They need to not be arduous. They need to be fun and interesting. And by the way, I mean that as, a middle-aged woman talking with another middle-aged woman, thinking then about this next generation of people in the workplace who are, 10 and 20 years younger than we are. I mean, it's like they don't have the interest or the patience in plodding through anything, right? And nor should
Yep.
they be expected to have that. So I think that seeing that, seeing what the need is in the market and seeing vendor partners really step up and provide some really innovative things, I think is exciting. I think it's very cool. Paying off of the things that we just talked about, one thing that I want to mention that I think is really important is that, as we are living through, these great changes, some of which were spurred by a global pandemic and changes in the work landscape and that kind of thing, I think it's important. We've seen sort of a new era ushered in for employees, and a new way of thinking about work and careers. And a lot of the way that we find employees are thinking today is this worth it? What's in this for me? And it's a shift in the way people work today. And I don't know about your career history, but I can tell you in my career, I came of age at a time and was building my career at a time when you were darn lucky to have a job, and you took whatever salary they would give you, and you took whatever paltry salary increases you got when you got them. And I also came of age in a time when you didn't want to be a job hopper, and you needed to stay in a job for a certain amount of time, or people would think you were a job hopper. And all of that has changed. And I think what we're seeing, especially coming out of the pandemic, is that employees have realized that in many instances that for them, work is not everything, and they care about well-being, their physical well-being, their mental well-being, and their financial well-being. They care about learning opportunities and mentorship opportunities and career advancement opportunities, and how organizations that they're working for embrace DEI initiatives, and how organizations that they work for think about sustainability. And I think that a lot of the key to talent retention today, not only retention but recruitment as well, is addressing these things. And as we've talked about here before, that it's a lot of this is a cultural thing. And I think that what leaders need to do is to understand and recognize that these are what the things that are important. They have to break down the silos that exist in HR. They have to do, as you've mentioned, and as we've talked about here, build a true culture based on continuous learning. I know that you have read this report, and I read it as well. The LinkedIn's 2022 Workplace Learning Report, and one of the best tidbits of information I saw in there was a quote from a site from Linda Kai, the VP of Talent Development for LinkedIn, and she said, "The responsibility of learning has always been to help organizations navigate uncertainty and chaos in the world." Well, I think that we probably both agree that we have certainly experienced massive uncertainty and chaos in the world, and we're not through that yet. So I thought that that was really an interesting report. And I know that a lot of what we are able to do, and a lot of what a quick pivot and navigating so many changes that a pandemic wrought, is cloud technology. Cloud technology allowed us to do so many of the things that we were able to do and we are able to do. And I know that of course I'm preaching to the choir here, yet you know very well about the importance of cloud technology and the benefits it can deliver. But I'd love for you to share with us a little bit about your thoughts on rethinking and learning change management as it relates to cloud, and what you're seeing there.
So I think the first thing that is important to understand is that with the shift to cloud and to kind of agile working, um, we have to recognize that it is, we're going to hear this word continuous again, but it's a
Okay.
continuous journey. There
Yeah.
is no goalpost
Yep.
for your learning
Mm-mm.
in cloud. It's a milestone, but that horizon and where you need to be is always going to be out in front.
Right.
So I think it can be very, very hard for people to come to accept that there is no, like I said,
You're
there's no
never done.
goalpost. You're not crossing the finish line. The finish line is going to move on you
Yep.
every single day. And
Yep.
so
You're never
um,
done.
it is a really hard thing
Yeah.
sometimes for folks to accept that.
Yeah.
But once you do, it's very freeing. And if you think about that, my team, which is really, our online commerce, our digital store for customers, we have a lot of development work that we have to do to kind of continue to improve the customer experience, add new functionality, add new capabilities. We had to move a few years ago from more of a waterfall dev model to an agile model. And you need to be able to apply that same kind of mindset. It's always iterative. It
Right.
doesn't have to be perfect. You do it in little short sprints. So
Right.
it's the same approach to learning.
Yeah.
I think is very, very necessary in the cloud, and with that recognition that you're never going to cross the finish line, which is why I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna sound like a broken record a little bit. Why you've got to have some of that gamification
Right.
built in the learning. You have to have some peer to peer, because nobody is ever going to get a certificate and be done. We're
Right.
done with that. Um, so so you need some stuff that makes it social and fun and allows people to pause for a minute and feel good about the milestone they reached, that
Right.
badge, that pat on the back, those points from a peer. Accept those as a good thing and keep moving,
Yeah.
because the finish line is not there anymore.
And I think about how we reward ourselves. Okay. So I'm in my office all day, every day. I'm working. I'm, up to my elbows in things and meeting what seems like the needs of many, many people. And that's my job as a leader of a company. That's my job. I'm not complaining about that. But how I reward myself sometimes is that I'm like, okay, I'm going to play a little game. And I love word games. And so, I'll grab my phone and I'll open a word game and I'll spend 5 minutes catching up on the word games that I play against other people. And then I put my phone down and I'm done. And my point in that is that when you can make learning as rewarding as that little break is, I think it's a game changer, and I think that that's what people are looking for. And many of us like to compete against ourselves, against one another. People like to, be first. People like to be the best. People like to be the quickest to complete something, and they also like helping each other. I remember one time I was talking with somebody who was involved in low code, no code applications within an organization. And she had a very, very entry level job, but she was in a program where she learned how to develop low code, no code apps. And I remember talking with her, and she was just saying, I just never imagined I would be able to do something like this. I mean, like I look forward to coming to work. I've become an ambassador as it relates to this program throughout the organization. I get to teach other people how to do this. When they have a problem, they want, they're stuck somewhere, they call me. I mean, and to see the light in her eyes as she spoke to me about this, and to see how she felt about her career and her future with the company and how excited she was about being able to take on something that she had never, and I think her job before was pretty, kind of an administrative, repetitive task sort of job that automation replaced, right? And so to me, that's what's so fulfilling when we're talking. I mean, it's easy to talk about these things right from the 30,000-foot level, but you really look at the impact that this has at the employee level beyond what it does for the organization. To me, that's what's incredibly fulfilling and exciting to see.
Yeah, and encouraging that knowledge transfer and that
Yeah.
sharing, so that learners become teachers and
Yeah.
and vice versa. And it's very, as you said, it's rewarding for everybody, particularly if you come from you're starting in a place with less confidence and
Right.
it's growing over
Right.
time.
Well, and you mentioned knowledge transfer, and that's something that we haven't touched on, but we have a massive amount of people in the workforce who are nearing retirement age. And so when you think about learning and development and the vast amount of knowledge that these individuals have, and think about how we can share that knowledge from them throughout the organization, I think that's a really important part of learning and development initiatives as well. I'm sure you're seeing that too.
Absolutely. Being
Absolutely.
able to kind of crowdsource some learning.
Yeah, absolutely. So who is let's talk so we talked about so many different things, but let's talk about, you know, where where we go from here. Like, so we know we have a skills gap. We know what the challenges are. We know what employees want. Who's responsible for implementing continuous learning measures? Is it organizations? Is it employees? Is it what are you seeing? Where is it HR? What are you seeing?
So we're seeing it come from a lot of different places, actually. One of the things that we have also is SAP Enable Now, which is like a digital adoption tool.
Yeah.
So it helps companies deliver, time of need learning to
Yeah.
people. So again, within the context of their job, provides that extra kind of support and confidence building that helps improve productivity and performance. So you can see continuous learning um, being fostered from the IT department. They are starting to do that. You see it being driven from HR when you look at more of the kind of comprehensive management systems that help put that infrastructure in place, to
Right.
make sure that you've got the baseline program there. But then you'll also see it coming in from line of business leaders who recognize the need for it, maybe tailored within their organization. So you'll see like specialist learning, like so they'll be learning for customer service or customer centric kind of organizations, or the frontline retail folks. So you
Right.
also start to see learning kind of differentiated by industry, by
Right.
the type of employee and the business objectives that those employees have. So it's really a problem that is being addressed from multiple facets.
Yeah, and I know one thing, that is tremendously important is thinking about from an accessibility standpoint. And I know that this has been part of my conversations with some SAP vendor partners. But it's, we can't think about when we think about continuous learning, not all of us sit in front of a desktop computer or a laptop computer. There are a whole, hundreds of thousands of workers, employees who are in the field who need to be able to learn. This is the value of cloud, the benefit of cloud, right? The beauty of cloud is that, they need to be able to pull out an iPhone or any kind of phone, any kind of mobile device, not just necessarily an iPhone, but they need to be pull out a device, learn on an iPad, do whatever they need. And they need to be able to quickly learn and solve problems and get past wherever roadblocks they have as they're in the field doing their jobs. And I think that's really, it's really cool to see so many vendor partners focusing on solutions that facilitate just that.
True, and there's a lot there for virtual or remote learning, for, mobile, etc. But when you
Right.
say accessibility, there's another aspect to that
Yeah.
too, which is you also it needs to truly be multimedia in order to be accessible, because not everybody can watch a video.
Sure.
Sometimes they need the visuals described to them because they don't
Right.
see well enough to be able to watch the video. Not
Or
everybody
here.
can read the transcript, or,
Right.
read the text. They need it
Yeah.
to be spoken
Yeah.
to them. And so, the kind of rich media that we have available today and in the cloud is another um, really important aspect
Yeah.
of how we make things accessible to folks.
Yeah.
So it's not just
Serving
being
all
able to
people.
access it on the fly, but actually in a format that best suits the way you can receive and understand and consume information.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that makes perfect sense. So, this has been a conversation filled with so much information. What I want to wrap our show with is for organizations looking to upskill or reskill employees, which I think is every organization. Where do they start? What's your best advice?
Well, start by talking to the employees. They have surprisingly, insightful ideas about how they would like to learn and what they would like to learn. So that would be tip number one. Survey them, talk to them somehow, gather input from the employee base.
And don't
And
just do
then,
it once, right? I mean,
yes, do it
on a regular
continuously.
basis.
That's a theme today.
That's a theme.
Yep. And then anybody can check out a variety of options on SAP Store. We have a ton of learning, and some of those things that I mentioned earlier, with kind of the micro learning or the peer-to-peer learning and the virtual reality, all that you can kind of check it out and browse. It's really good to get an idea, and kind of make a survey of what's out there, and then you marry that to what you heard from your employees.
Yeah, and I think one thing I want to point out, you mentioned this earlier in our conversation, but it was quite a bit earlier. So some of the things, there's an SAP Learning Hub, there's a full learning portfolio, there are, the Centrical for Enterprise Learning Solutions from SAP Blend, which is a learning experience
From
platform.
from Talent Team, yes, I'm remiss
Yes,
by not mentioning
yes,
them earlier.
yes,
That is one of the best selling partner solutions we've got in the
absolutely.
learning space, and some really, really good customer success stories there.
There's the Immerse platform. There's the collaborative learning platform, which I think we may have mentioned before. There's the Global Business Skills from Hard Skills platform. There's the SAP Litmus. I mean, and I know that that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of, what resources there are available, what applications there are available. Again, I'm going to include a link to the SAP store where you'll be able to find much more information on this. But the reality of it is there's so many resources that are available, and so I hope that this conversation has inspired our listening or and watching audio, reading audience to want to think more about learning and development programs and to embrace a culture of continuous learning and see the benefits that that can deliver for your organization. Amanda, if you have just one piece of advice to leave our audience with, what would that be?
Stay curious.
I love it. I love it. I'm wired that way, so that's not a problem. But stay curious, friends. That's amazing advice. And with that, we're going to wrap our show. Amanda Mountain from SAP, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure. I know that the two of us could talk on this and many other subjects for a long time, but it's always great to spend time with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelly.